Explore LISA, a program experimenting with intelligent systems to reduce the hazards of driving. And examine an innovative collaboration of mathematicians and teachers designed to understand and improve methods for teaching mathematics. All on this edition of On Beyond.
Over 43,000 people were killed on American highways last year and over 3 million injured. And the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration estimates that about 30% of those fatal crashes were due to driver distraction, totaling more than 10,000 fatalities. Those alarming statistics are driving university researchers, automakers, and Department of Transportation agencies, including NHTSA and the Federal Highway Administration, to invest in new approaches to reduce the toll from highway accidents. Enter LISA, the Laboratory for Intelligent Safe Automobiles. Located in the Jacobs School of Engineering at the University of California, San Diego, the lab and its multidisciplinary team of faculty and graduate student researchers are developing smart car systems based on onboard cameras and other sensors, computer vision processing, and new tools to assist the motorist to drive more carefully.
In this lab, our research team is interested in looking at technologies which are going to improve the safety of the drivers, occupants, as well as just the overall traffic.
UCSD electrical and computer engineering professor Mohan Trivedi's initial work in the field, sponsored by Caltrans, focused on networked camera systems on highways to improve traffic flow and accident management. Automakers were intrigued, among them Daimler Chrysler, Volkswagen, and Nissan.
We are really interested in looking at the entire ecology of driving. So it includes drivers and drivers' interactions with other things.
The initial LISA research began with a simple hypothesis that conversations between a driver and passenger in a car are safer than if the driver were talking on a cell phone, because the passenger knows traffic conditions and the state of the driver, so he or she can modulate the conversation or even stop talking if conditions are risky. Funded by Daimler Chrysler and a UC Discovery grant in 2001, the research aimed to see if it would be possible to monitor the driver's state and convey it to outside callers with whom they were speaking. Inside the lab, researchers equipped a Mercedes test frame with a variety of cameras and other sensors to monitor the driver's facial expressions and other parameters. Joel McCall and other researchers developed a system to continuously monitor the state of the driver using pattern recognition to analyze different moods and convey the information instantly to the outside caller. Sending the actual video would take up too much bandwidth, so instead researchers developed emoticons that could change in real time and require almost no bandwidth. The project allowed LISA researchers to explore the types, positioning, and numbers of cameras needed to best capture what's happening inside the car.
We realized that we had to actually start instrumenting actual vehicles that we can do systematic experimental trials with.
The UCSD team took their research on the road, literally. They outfitted real vehicles with sensors, processing power, and computer storage. The first, dubbed LISA P, was based on a Volkswagen Passat. The second, LISA Q, on an Infiniti Q45.
This particular vehicle right here had all those appropriate sensing technologies, which was able to look at the driver's effects, look at the side surround, look at what is ahead of the car, what is behind the car, as well as the 18 parameters which are coming on the CAN bus. And we have a whole sophisticated computing lab right in the trunk of this, where all of this information is going, and in real time we are getting this synchronized capture of over 24 cameras and sensors.
An ongoing project funded by VW and the UC Discovery Grant program addressed an important safety problem. Although airbags have saved many lives, more than 200 people have died on U.S. roads since 1996, and many more were injured because of the impact from the airbag. Most were children or short women leaning forward at the time of the airbag's deployment.
And in order to develop new types of sensing systems, we started instrumenting Volkswagen Passat with camera systems which allowed us to examine the posture of an occupant in real time, utilizing different modalities of visual sensing. like stereo, like thermal imaging, or like actual three-dimensional voxelization system.
In other words, the car itself could tell the airbag to deploy with less force, or not deploy at all. To determine posture, the UCSD researchers used stereo cameras and software to build a 3D volumetric description of the occupant and thermal infrared for nighttime driving.
We must do that thing very accurately, and the research challenge is we must do that extremely fast.
Fast, Trivedi explains, is under 20 milliseconds, a bit less than the time from impact it takes an airbag to deploy. Japanese automaker Nissan approached Trivedi and his team with a much bigger task to develop a new driver assistance system that would draw the driver's attention to possible problems while minimizing distractions. To capture and analyze the data needed to monitor the driver, car interior, and nearby cars and roadways, researchers installed more than 24 cameras and other sensors on board the Lisa Q.
So the idea there is that we would like to have a vehicle which is maintaining an awareness of the state of the driver, the state of the traffic around the car, the goal of that particular drive, and the state of the vehicle itself, the vehicle dynamics. And incorporating all of that information, can we make some sort of predictions about an intentional or unintentional maneuver that the driver or the vehicle might be making. And if there is a maneuver which is going to lead the vehicle into an accident and that the driver is not aware of, then we would like to give them some kind of alarm, some notification, so a corrective action can be made. We have developed several new types of robust algorithms for capturing a full 360-degree surround of a vehicle as the vehicle is moving.
The project goes well beyond computer vision, though, into areas of cognitive science, signal processing, even psychology. Trivedi turned to the California Institute for Telecommunications and Information Technology and its interdisciplinary team of researchers at UCSD working on intelligent transportation and telematics.
Over the years, a number of groups have shown that when you're driving and doing some distracting tasks, that the overall performance of your driving is degraded somewhat. But what they haven't really been able to sort out is whether that occurs because you're switching back and forth, whether you're doing both of them and some mental resources are shared between the two tasks.
Psychology professor Hal Pashler is an expert on human attention and multitask modeling.
So we're doing the kind of fine-grained studies that help us to figure out what's actually causing the interference and, with luck, ultimately be able to reduce it somewhat. We've set up a simulator in which people drive basically a fairly simple course and following a lead car, and the lead car periodically brakes and they have to avoid hitting the car. There's also some steering involved there, and we have people do a variety of other tasks that require making a quick response, and we look at how the driving suffers depending on how close in time and in what direction the two events in the driving and in the other task are situated.
Over the past 2 years, more than 100 subjects have taken test drives on the simulator. In one version, the program assessed how quickly a test subject hit the brake pedal when a car up ahead slows down or another event intervenes.
Our first line of research was to understand whether the braking task is affected by these other tasks, and that seems to be pretty clear that yes, it is. Our next step, our current step, is to try and augment information to drivers so that the braking task is either less affected or not affected.
We find that there are some critical bottlenecks. Certain kinds of mental operations are always done one at a time, even if they're things you would judge intuitively trivial and easy, like just deciding. And they tend to focus on the planning of actions rather than perception or producing responses. So people can produce actions and perceive stimuli all at the same time in parallel without any problem. But when it comes to planning two distinct actions, that's often done sequentially, one at a time. And so for us, the exciting thing here is to try to see, do these bottlenecks occur in the driving context just as they occur in these more elementary laboratory tasks that we've focused on. The goal is to figure out how to use this information to bring it to the driver's attention in such a way as to improve his performance rather than just to disorient him or lead him to focus on the warning itself.
The task of figuring out which interfaces work best to enhance driver attention and safety fell to this man.
There's a lot of rich possibilities for new kinds of interfaces.
Jim Holland, a cognitive scientist at UCSD, is an expert on human-centered design of interfaces. With Trivedi's group, his research team designed detailed experiments to help develop ethnographic models of driving behavior. So far, over 24 test subjects have each driven the Lisa Q on 90-minute driving runs on San Diego freeways. The sensory system of Lisa Q was successful in collecting and recording audio and visual records of the driver's behavior, what they were looking at, where their hands and feet were at all times, vehicle surround, what was in front, behind, and around the vehicle, the vehicle's location, and over 18 vehicle dynamics parameters. About 1/4 terabyte of information from a single experimental run.
For us, the opportunity to have rich, detailed visual records of real-world behavior of participants is quite an exciting possibility for understanding the phenomena well enough to really build interfaces that support rather than hinder people in their activities. For example, with the active cruise control, where now the car just adjusts its speed. We could take that same information that the radar is providing and provide it to the driver in a different way. For example, by having force feedback on the accelerator pedal, so that one could literally sort of feel things out in front of you. As you got closer to something, you'd have to push down on the accelerator more. So we're in a sort of preliminary stage of that, of sort of trying to understand the phenomena enough and understand people well enough so that we can explore alternative kinds of interface technology for supporting them.
Bhaskar Rao is a UCSD electrical engineer and expert in signal processing, which becomes vital when there may be dozens of sensors on board, and the data must be accurate and instantaneous to ensure the right safety decision. Rao has also developed novel algorithms for analyzing the intent of the driver's lane change operation. Currently, his group is working with Trivedi's to extend and evaluate those mathematical formulae for real-time operation on board the Lisa Q, one of the benefits of multidisciplinary research.
By interacting with people who are not typically electrical engineers, I get to learn about issues that probably I would not otherwise be even thinking of. And that certainly factors into my research.
What we're having to do is to see complex activity from many different perspectives if we're going to understand it in a way that we can design systems that really, make it a safe place for drivers and make it a comfortable, enjoyable place to be.
And you just need a different set of concepts than what we're familiar with. So it's an exciting chance to get exposed to a variety of different disciplines' perspectives on the problem of driving.
With nearly 35 faculty and graduate students involved, the Laboratory for Safe Intelligent Automobiles and the vehicles deployed so far are creating a capability that exists on no other campus.
For instance, currently we are not really looking at a thing associated with, say, sleepy driver. But we already have everything that is needed for us to do, say, blink rate analysis or the driver posture analysis, which might be indicative of a person going to get sleepy or drowsy.
Among some of the new areas Lisa researchers hope to tackle, systems customized for drivers on city streets rather than highways, technology tools to offset slower reflexes as seniors age, and getting smart cars to talk to each other and to smart infrastructure.
Now we are coming to a stage where we can actually have cars which are talking to other cars which are in and around them, as well as cars which can talk to the infrastructure, like the bridges, like the intersection, like the roadways. And can we utilize information which is coming on these wireless channels from this larger context and develop smoother and safer traffic flow is one of the key issues that we want to investigate in the future.
A goal that has global implications, given a recent World Health Organization report that roughly 1.2 million people die each year on roads worldwide.
Under a state law that took effect in 2004, every California student was supposed to pass basic algebra to graduate from high school. But last year alone, 13,000 California high school graduates were waived of this requirement. This isn't good news for the future of American science and technology, and it doesn't bode well for the students themselves. Research done by UCSD economists Julian Betts and Heather Rose showed that taking one extra course in algebra or geometry in high school led to a significant increase in students' future earnings. But how do you teach algebra to all students, not just those who are excelling in math? Grappling with that question led a team of UCSD mathematics professors to develop the Algebraic Thinking Institute, a place where middle school and high school teachers come to rethink what it means to learn and teach mathematics.
If we can change that approach where there's no fear of going up to the board and doing your solution, right or wrong, because we learn from the wrong part as well as from the right part. And kids can get over that fear and understand that they're contributing regardless of whether it's right or wrong. They're contributing to it. I think that has a real good effect on the kids.
If we could just have a group of staff members who are devoted to math talk about math, I think that in and of itself would affect the students greatly. And that's part of what's happening here, is that we are a group of teachers getting together talking about math, and in doing that we're learning so much more about the teaching and about the math.
Jeff Remmel, Associate Dean of UCSD's Division of Physical Sciences, asked Alfred Manister and Gershon Harel, fellow mathematics professors and founders of the Algebraic Thinking Institute, about ATI's mission.
Even though there's a problem that has one direction in solving it, people have different ways of understanding the concepts involved. And in many cases, other people have not thought about these ways of understanding these concepts. So even simple problems, or simple problem in the sense that traditional problems, it turned out they offer opportunities for diverse ways of understanding particular concept within the problems. And they provide great opportunities for reflecting on what that means for teaching mathematics to their students.
When I started, I thought you find a good way and you try to make sure everyone understands that way, and it would just be confusing if there were multiple ways, because then the students won't focus on the good way or the best way. And what I've learned from observation, now that I know what to look for, is there are many ways to understand a problem, and if the students see many ways, they can find the one that they're most comfortable with, the one that's most accessible to them. And I've seen this dramatically in ATI virtually every year.
The emphasis on multiple approaches is to deepen students' mathematical knowledge.
The current programs are not working because they are not bringing about the kind of change and teachers' knowledge and teachers' practice that we all wish for. When we talk about teachers' knowledge, we think of three components of knowledge. Knowledge of mathematics, knowledge of how students learn mathematics, and knowledge of teaching practice that can be effective. Well, knowledge of mathematics, there's no doubt that is a critical component in teachers' knowledge, because without deep understanding of mathematics beyond what they teach, teachers will not be able to recognize the potential of their students' insight, to recognize difficulties that they encounter. They will not be able to focus on important things in mathematics. So undoubtedly, the center of our focus is, in perhaps even uniqueness, is that mathematics is the source of the other pieces of knowledge that we want students to acquire.
Given that
the Algebraic Thinking Institute is an intensive program. Teachers spend 30 hours per week for 4 weeks during the summer and attend follow-up sessions during the school year. On a typical day, in their second summer of the Institute, a group of teachers worked on a complex problem involving time, speed, and distance of two travelers. The teachers came up with 4 different approaches to solving the problem. The first approach was algebraic and employed the formula for the sum of terms in an arithmetic series.
So now I'm happy. At n is equal to 15 over 2.
The second approach involved a graphical representation of each traveler's accumulated distance over time and two equations to find the point of intersection on the graph.
Jill's distance, that's why this point is below Jill's
The
line.
third approach was strictly numerical. It used a table to compare each traveler's accumulated distance by hour and then by minute.
6, 9, 5, 6.
The final approach was to plot time versus speed and compare the area under the graph which corresponded to each traveler's accumulated distance.
You're welcome. So,
in solving such problems, teachers are simultaneously deepening their knowledge of mathematics, knowledge of how students learn mathematics, and instructional approaches that respond to students' needs.
X equaling, or the number of days being 7 and 8.
Pedagogy, that is, issues of teaching and learning, arise naturally out of teachers' struggle with the mathematics. In this example, much reflection occurred when problem-solving approaches 1 and 2 yielded different answers.
All right? So what this brings up is a very important teaching issue. So students might understand this. They say, oh, I understand why this will lead you to the correct answer. Okay? But I don't understand what's wrong with what I did. It is one thing to understand what is right. It is another to understand what was wrong. So here we approach the whole thing mathematically seems to be correct. I understand if you did that way, you're going to find the right answer. I understand that. So, but please differentiate between these two. So students sometimes come with an approach, right? An approach is wrong, so you say to the students, because you have you have the right intent, you want students to know the right knowledge. You say, oh, here is how you do it correctly. And students may understand that. But that's one thing. It's one thing to understand why you are right as a teacher. It's another to understand why I was wrong. What did I do that was wrong?
This class has really forced me to ask myself why do I do these steps? What does it mean when I see this situation? Why do I solve it in this way? And when I take that back to the classroom, I start to think, well, why am I teaching students a particular method? Do they really understand what they're doing, or are they just following an algorithm?
Many a time when Gershon gives us a situation by which we need to find a solution, that generally I find myself frustrated at times in trying to locate that era, or I would say that level of thinking by which I can enter into, as I would call it, glimpsing the mystic, in which I can go on to another level of thinking, another level of understanding of this, the magic of mathematics. And that frustration makes me better understand when my students, experience that.
And the classes that I've had as a teacher, rarely do you really get a chance to enhance your math skills. You can enhance your teaching skills, and a lot of classes you take about curriculum or classroom behavior and so on, but not often do you really get to explore mathematics like we get to here. And in fact, I've been 12 years teaching, and this is ATI is the only one that has offered me opportunity where I can go and expand my math.
It's increased my appreciation for how the students approach things, because I have a set repertoire of approaches that I would use. And for instance, this last year I had this young lady who was very high functioning autistic, and she had a brain for math, but she would approach these problems in a way that I would never even imagine approaching the problems. So I would spend 15 minutes having her just going through her approach and explaining to me how she did it and where did that come from, just so that I could understand her approach. And in the past, I don't know that I would have appreciated it as much as I do now.
You're experiencing your own growth, and at the same time you're learning about how you can apply that in your classroom. So it's kind of like content and and pedagogy at the same time, and you can't take those apart. They're interrelated, so you're experiencing everything, but you're also seeing an improvement in yourself, and you're almost going through those emotions that students would go through in the classroom. And you can only facilitate your own classroom in this way by having gone through it yourself.
This is a paradigm shift for the nature of a classroom, so that it's very difficult to take especially young students who have learned math in a certain way and suddenly say, no, you're going to learn it in a completely different way. One of the interesting results of the Third International Math and Science Study was that there is a standard set script for classes in the United States, for mathematics classes, that is far more rigid than anyone had imagined. It goes across the country, even though there may not be a common curriculum and not everybody goes to the same school to learn how to become a teacher. But basically, every class consists of a short review, an example problem where students are taught how to solve a problem, and then a long time working on very similar problems. When you contrast that with a typical day at ATI, or what we hope would be a typical class for our teachers to teach, the students come in, they see a problem that they are ready for, but it is not like one they've seen before, probably, and then they are told, work on it. Find ways to solve it. And that takes a long time, and then they talk about the ways they found, and they don't have one way, and they don't have an algorithm to follow. And the implications of this, I think, are enormous.
Those problem-solving skills are the kinds of skills that the employers want to see. That's why they hire them. One of the reasons people hire mathematicians in general is because they have problem-solving skills.
Right.
And because you're going to face new problems no matter what you do.
In these lean times, ATI is struggling with financial issues due to the loss of state funding. A research grant from the National Science Foundation is permitting the professors to complete their work with this group of teachers. Meanwhile, the professors and teachers at the Institute continue to dream of improving mathematics education for all students.
We have to take advantage of the teachers that we have in our institutions and teach them in a way that is compatible with the nature of learning, so that when they go to the classroom, they implement the way they have been taught and impact others within their school buildings. So I think what the hope is for what we are doing here in the future, that we expand the kind of work that we are doing to work with pre-service teachers as well. So we will be working from both ends, and more institutions will do the same thing. So it's accumulation of the impact that perhaps will bring about the kind of change we wish for.
Could you imagine what it would be like to have students who were exposed to this kind of approach from the time that they first started learning math